Good evening, my dear friends. I welcome you all to the Hindu and the Businessline editorial analysis on August 4th, 2022. The first article to be taken from the Businessline is a cry of the Draconian Act which has been approved by the July 27th Supreme Court, affirmed by the July 27th Supreme Court judgment on the Prevention of Money Laundering Act. Money laundering, as I explained in the previous discussion, the editorial discussions a few days back, is the whitewashing of the black money into the money entering into the Indian financial system. The Draconian Act, which resembles the Terrorism and Disruptive Activities Prevention Act, TADA for short, most popularly known as TADA, and Prevention of Terrorism Act, POTA. These TADA and POTA acts were very much draconian, and the ruthless exercise of the acts saw that many people were arrested and were put under trial without giving them the opportunity of a natural justice. The natural justice was not afforded to them, and under the Congress rule, these two acts became the nightmare of the convicts. The potential convicts were afraid of being put under TADA, and it was used for political reasons. And politics mastermind or ruled the minds of the ruling Congress party while arresting the persons under the TADA and the POTA. The similar draconian rule of law under the Prevention of Money Laundering Act, which has been affirmed by the Supreme Court decision on 27th July, shows that this act is going to be a very black spot on the tenet of justice, which is being offered by Articles 14, 20, and 21 of the Indian Constitution. The Part 3 of the Indian Constitution gives certain privileges to the Indian citizens under Article 14, 20, and 21. Under the principles enshrined in Article 14, 20, and 21 of the Indian Constitution, Part 3 of the Constitution, the principles of natural justice has been framed. There are two principles of natural justice. A convict or a person will be held innocent unless proved guilty. That is the first principle of natural justice. And the second principle of natural justice is an opportunity of being heard must be given to the person arrested. However, under the Prevention of Money Laundering Act, Sections 22, 23, and 25 of the Prevention of Money Laundering Act does away with the principles of natural justice. It says that the person arrested must prove himself not guilty, and the enforcement case investigation report is detailing the charges against him and made the convict is or the person put under trial is made very much dark of the trial process, and the mandatory enforcement of the search and seizure provisions are implicated upon him. This is just victimizing the citizens of their basic rights. basic human rights. Why the opposition has demanded a review of the July 27th order of the Supreme Court. The review means once a judgment has been pronounced by the Supreme Court, the top court of the country, the aggrieved parties can go for a review of the order. And the review has been demanded by the opposition parties. The Prevention of Money Laundering Act enshrines in its ambit the attachment of the property of the person who is arrested without him holding guilty and proving guilty. It is very much necessary that a person should be presumed innocent unless proved guilty. However, the PMLA Act puts the onus on the person arrested to make himself prove that he is not guilty. How is it that possible? It is a very onerous task cast on the victims of the provisions of PMLA Act. The government is talking of ease of doing business and growth of the business in the lands of our country. However, such kind of provisions, the entrenchment provisions, the arrest and search provisions in the arrest of and search and seizure provisions in the PMLA will impede the ease of doing business with the businessmen being held victims of the PMLA Act. Not only the politicians, the businessmen would also suffer. Hence, the opposition parties must rake up the parliament with the demand of repealing this draconian law. Unless it is being repealed as the draconian law, this will become the tool of witch hunt for the ruling political party at the center. Moving on to the Hindu. The trade deficit is the July figures of the trade deficit shows that for the last 3 months the trade deficit has continued to become a very consistent force. The trade deficit is the more of imports over exports. The import bills are more than the export bills. The current account deficit results from the trade deficit. Current account deficit is the increase in the import bills over the export bills, and hence the current account deficit shows that a balance of payment is tilted against the country. Balance of payment shows how much we have to pay more for the imports we make rather than the receipts and realizations in the form of exports. Most of the goods like engineering goods, gems and jewelry, and pharmaceutical goods and drugs, those are the trademark goods being exported from India. The textiles are also exported from India. All this show a contraction. The engineering goods, which forms 26% of the export of the goods from India, sees a contraction of 2.5%. This is an alarming figure. The central government, this must be attributed to the central government's export tax on the steel exports, which hampers the engineering goods export because the engineering goods become costly with the export duty on the steel exports. And thereafter, the broadened spectrum of export goods also suffers a contraction. Last month, 0.8% contraction. In June 2022, a 1.8% contraction was explained by the government as a very slight change. However, this has increased now. Most of the European and the US countries are facing a recession. Therefore, the PMI figure, that is PMI figure is the figure of manufacturing output in foreign countries. For the manufactured goods in US and Euro, Eurozone is showing a very greater decline, and therefore the demand is going on decreasing. Most of the Eurozone and the US countries are only importing Indian goods. The imports has reached around $5 billion of bill. So the US and the Eurozone crisis and its PMI index showing a very greater contraction in the growth in the US and the Eurozone economy is affecting the export of goods from India, because unless the demand is created for the Indian goods in US and the Eurozone, the Indian goods will not be sold. So the exports is being tinged heavy by the PMI data, and US and Eurozone are getting for a contraction and a successive recession. Then the Bhagat Singh Koshyari, the governor of Maharashtra, his statements are not befitting for a governor. Recently, he made a statement that if the Gujaratis and Rajasthanis leave from Mumbai and Pune, the Maharashtra would be limited to a growthless state. In 2019 November, he just made a very fragile government composing of the BJP and the and some of the Sharad Pawar's parties, that is NCP's members, to form a government without even going for a test of confidence motion. However, the government did not last for long, only for a few days, which was replaced by Mahavikas Aghadi. Then, in 2020, while the COVID was overhanging on the Maharashtra health space, he commented that the secular government, that is Shiv Sena, had become secular and therefore not keeping open the religious places of worship. This also raised a flag on his legitimacy and the logical view on the state of affairs in the land of Maharashtra. And then in 2000, later on 2021, when the speaker's post was vacant, he was not filling the post for a long period of 1 year, citing several excuses. And when the fragmented Shiv Sena rebels and the BJP formed a government at Maharashtra, he was quick to add a speaker to the assembly. All this, and then more to top it all, he ridiculed Chhatrapati Shivaji, the great Maratha who is respected by all in Maharashtra and all over India, and Savitri Bhai Phule, one of the greatest icons of Maharashtra. So all this show that his tenure, his role as a governor is being vitiated by kinds of statements made by him, which is overreaching more than his role as a governor and a constitutional head of a state. Friends, I have come to the conclusion of the analysis of the Hindu and the Businessline editorials today. Meet you tomorrow with some more interesting topics. Till then, take care. Good night.